Good morning. My name is Craig Anderson. I'm a member of the board here at the Unitarian Universalist Church of Reston. Need another cup of coffee. I'm here with my daughter Zia, who's going to help with the announcements today. And Zia said, wow, pretty good crowd for a rainy day. Well, thank you for coming. We have a few announcements, so I'm going to turn it over to Zia to cover those.
Our religious education program for children and teens kickoff is today. All families are invited to attend the family lunch and parent and caregiver orientation today after worship. This is considered mandatory for guardians of children in kindergarten through 6th grade. Please grab coffee after the service and return to the sanctuary. Lunch will be served around noon and childcare will be provided. The high school youth group will meet today in the youth room at 11:30, and OWL for 7th grade through 9th grade will begin this afternoon.
All right, so please join us this Saturday evening, as we welcome Reverend Aileen and celebrate the new church year with a welcome reception and a concert. The event will be held right here in the sanctuary, and the concert will be streamed live on Zoom. An email will be sent out this afternoon with further information and an RSVP link. If you have not RSVP'd or signed up for childcare, please do so today. But if you just decide to come at the last minute, do that too. And all are welcome. Whether you are here in person or on Zoom, we're so glad you're here this morning. No matter how old or young you are, wherever you are in your spiritual journey, however you identify and whoever you love, know that you are welcome here. And now, let us center ourselves for worship. Please take some deep, quieting breaths as we listen to the prelude by Cynthia Young and the choir.
Good morning. Our prelude today also involves you, the congregation. It's a group song written by Leah Morris, and it's called All Are Welcome Here. So the choir is going to help me teach you your parts. It's a two-part song. Are you ready? Okay, so this side of the room, we're going to start with you and teach you your part first. So your part goes... Hey, all are welcome here. Hey, all are welcome here. Hey, I am welcome here, and you are welcome here. Hey, all are welcome here. Hey, all are welcome here. Hey, I am welcome here, and you are welcome here. Have you got it? Okay, keep that in your minds. All right, over here, your part goes like this. Your part goes, all are welcome here. All are welcome here. That's your part, here we go. All are welcome here. All are welcome here. One more time. All are welcome here. All are welcome here. Beautiful, beautiful. So now we're going to put them together. We're going to start with this group, and I will bring you all in just a moment. Hey, all are welcome here. Hey, all are welcome here. Hey, I am welcome here, and you are welcome here. Hey, all are welcome here. Hey, all are welcome here. Hey, I am welcome here, and you are welcome here.
Our opening words this morning are by Reverend Dr. David Breeden. Let's be the welcome we crave. Open hearts, arms outstretched. Let's embody radical welcome, unquestioning love. Let's be the welcome we crave, deeply hearing voices and hearts. Let's be the welcome we crave, enriching, understanding. Let us embody the community we crave.
Our opening hymn today is number 346, Come Sing a Song With Me. Now please rise in body and or spirit and join us. Come sing a song with me. Come sing a song with me. Come sing a song with me, that I might know your mind. And I'll bring you home when hope is hard to find. And I'll bring a song of love and a rose in the winter time. Come dream a dream with me. Come dream a dream with me. Come dream a dream with me, that I might know your mind. And I'll bring you home when hope is hard to find. And I'll bring a song of love that grows in the winter time. Come walk in rain with me. Come walk in rain with me. Come walk in rain with me, that I might know your mind. And I'll bring you home when hope is hard to find. And I'll bring a song of love that grows in the winter time. Come share a rose with me. Come share a rose with me. Come share a rose with me, that I might know your mind. And I'll bring you home when hope is hard to find. And I'll bring a song of love and a rose in the winter time.
Good morning. Our chalice lighting words today come from Wendy Bartle and Lynn Gardner. From our separate joys and struggles, we come here to find peace of balance, to find blessing of restlessness. All are welcome to follow, to lead, to teach, to learn. All are welcome to give generously, to receive gratefully. All are welcome. If we are steady and composed, if we feel completely lost, if we don't know what we're feeling, this community has a place for us. Here we matter and we are loved. If you are steady and poised, if you're completely lost, if you don't know what you feel, this community has a place for all of us. Here we all matter. Here we are all loved.
Here at UUCR, we have a tradition of singing our covenant together every Sunday. Love is the spirit of this church. The words will appear up here on the screen. We are going to sing this song together seated in the sanctuary. And let's sing along with Diane.
Good morning. Now is the time for all ages. So if you're feeling young of body or young of spirit, there's room up here for you. And welcome, whether you're on Zoom or here in the sanctuary. Our story today is from a Middle Eastern Islamic tradition. And it's adapted from a version by Alice Anicheka Naisman and Elisa Davy Perlman. Mullah Nasruddin was working hard in his field. He was hot and tired and sweaty after a long day. He was also hungry because he hadn't eaten since sunrise, because it was the month of Ramadan and they fasted. He couldn't wait till sundown when he could eat, and tonight was going to be especially special because the wealthiest person in town had invited everyone to his house for a huge feast. Mullah Nasruddin looked up at the sun and realized that if he went home to change, he would be late. And he thought, better dirty than late. So he went to the wealthy man's house, and as he walked, he thought of all the delicious foods he would have. Olives and bread, hummus and falafel, chicken and beef, and best of all the desserts, date rolls, figs, and baklava. So good. He got to the wealthy man's house and knocked on the door. When the wealthy man opened the door, he looked at Nasruddin. He looked at his stained and patched coat and his muddy shoes, and with a scowl, he just waved Nasruddin in and didn't say a word to him. The house was full already, and Nasruddin couldn't find a place to sit. No one would talk to him, and the only way he could get to all that wonderful food was trying to squeeze in between people. So how did you think he felt at that point? Sad? Like sad and like no one cared about him, yeah.
I feel like he felt a little
frustrated. And he felt like he was just invisible. So he tried a bite of that wonderful, wonderful food, but he had no appetite because he was feeling so sad. So he returned home, and there, he changed into his finest coat. And let's see what this fine coat looks like. Yes. And with his coat on, he went back to the party. He knocked on the door, and there, the wealthy man this time opened the door, greeted him with a smile, and said, "Come in, come in." And from every corner of the room, people waved to him and motioned to him to sit near them. They also offered him all these wonderful foods. Quietly, Nasruddin sat down. He picked up some nuts and put them in his pocket and said, "Eat, Code, eat." What else do you think he might have had at this great party?
I think you may have had cake.
Cake. So he took a piece of cake, put it in a pocket and said, "Eat, Coat, eat." And then he began to feed his coat quickly with olives and bread, hummus, and falafel. Chicken and beef. And best of all, the dessert, dates and figs and baklava.
I love baklava.
I do too. That is so good. And by this time, everyone in the entire room were staring at him. And the host came over and said, "Mullin Nasruddin, what are you doing? Why are you feeding your coat like that?" And Nasruddin said, "When I came in my farm clothes, no one would talk to me. But now everyone is. So I know that it's not me who is welcome here, but my coat. So I'm feeding my coat." And how do you think the host and all the guests felt then? A little sorry?
It may have been funny to them.
Might have been funny, but they also might have felt sorry and embarrassed. So, so I wonder what this story might mean to each of us, and I wonder how we can extend a wider welcome. I think we'll be talking more about that today. And I will now sing the children out to religious education with "Go with Joy," and the words will be projected.
Now is the time in our service when we share our joys and concerns so that no one ever has to hold them alone. If you are joining us remotely this morning, you may wish to light a real or virtual candle wherever you are to mark what is in your heart as members of the in-person congregation here at UUCR place stones in the water here in the sanctuary. If those of you at home would like to share what's on your heart in the congregational chat on the screen, please write to all attendees. And please remember that what you share will be public. Those at home may then read others' joys and concerns shared in the chat, and then enter into your own time of reflection and prayer as we all listen to Diane play our meditation music. of life and love that so faithfully animates our creation. We are grateful for this community that is with us in times of both joy and sorrow. We hold in our hearts this morning all those who are facing any hardship or difficulty, those who are grieving or facing illness or disability in themselves or their friends or their loved ones. In particular, this morning, we hold in our hearts and prayers the victims of the dam break in Libya, where there are estimates of over 11,000 dead, and also the victims of the earthquake in Morocco. For them, we light this candle.
As a self-funded church, the UCR relies upon the generosity of its members and friends to fund daily operations and to ensure that our church and its resources are here for us and for others now and in the future. Pledges support our worship and music programs, our religious education program, programs for members and friends, community outreach, and connections to Unitarian Universalism. We now invite you to support the work of UU Reston by making your donation to the collection plate if you're here in the sanctuary, or using the link in the slide and in the chat box. Thank you for your generosity and support of our beloved spiritual home.
Circle
A long time ago now, close to 30 years, I started a graduate program. It was small and tenuous, funding was always an issue, and the program struggled to survive because it was unique. And yet at that time in my life, it was what I most needed. It was a place where I felt at home almost immediately. I found this circle of women from a variety of faith backgrounds who were struggling to make sense of their traditions through the lens of feminist critique. We read feminist, womanist, mujerista, and other global liberation theologies. We read poetry and prose and created liturgy and ritual. We played music and we danced. The program was a revelation to me, and it opened me up to seeing the world through a much larger, much more inclusive lens. You see, the point of the program was not necessarily to get us to reject the religious traditions we were critiquing, but to make them bigger, wider, break open the boundaries of what those faith traditions could be, what the divine could look like, what our roles in those traditions could be, and whose voices counted. I was a practicing Catholic when I went through that program, and it changed the way I looked at my own faith. Through the stories and experiences shared by the women in that program, my world expanded. And much as I would have loved to stay in that theological and worship space, it was a graduate program, so at some point I had to graduate. And I did. So in a way, I've been searching for that kind of community ever since. It was while I was finishing that program that I entered my first UU congregation about 25 years ago. I know all of you are thinking that, at last, she was able to find a church home, but it wasn't true. At first, I didn't fit in at all. Instead of finding a place where I could imagine a much larger, more expansive view of the divine, I was told there wasn't one, divine that is, and expanding my language for and images of the divine were irrelevant. The congregation had an interim minister and was in search. Just for a little context, I had been working at the grassroots level in the Catholic Church to push for women's ordination, and this is one of the first things I heard at my first coffee hour. Our ideal candidate is a 45-year-old man with a family, but unfortunately, most of the candidates are women. So even in this enlightened congregation, men in ministry were still the ideal, even as the interim was a woman. And that was disheartening. I almost left at that point and never returned. But I stayed, and it wasn't always easy. I can't count the number of times through the years people reassured me, both jokingly and sometimes seriously, that though I hadn't yet become an atheist secular humanist, I would one day see the light. I hate the dichotomy of atheism and theism because I think in many ways they have become meaningless, but that's a sermon for another time. The psychologist and researcher Brené Brown writes about belonging. Belonging is the innate human desire to be part of something larger than ourselves. Because this yearning is so primal, we often acquire it by fitting in and seeking approval, which are not only hollow substitutes for belonging, but often barriers to it. Because true belonging and fitting in are two very different things. Brené Brown writes, belonging is being somewhere where you want to be and they want you. Fitting in is being somewhere where you want to be, but they don't care one way or another. Belonging is being accepted for who you are. Fitting in is being accepted for being like everybody else. If I get to be me, I belong. If I have to be like you, I fit in. These distinctions are very important when it comes to creating welcoming UU spaces. Do we only welcome people who are just like us, or who are willing to become just like us? Or do we see people for who they are and see the value in that, even though they may not quite fit the UU stereotype? Every time those well-meaning UUs told me that one day I would see the true light, they were also telling me, you are not fully welcome. You don't yet belong. A long time ago, when I was in college, I was at Mass. My cousin was with me, and he had his one-year-old daughter with him. And because it was a student service, young children were not usually present. When my cousin's daughter started crying for much of the service, he was mortified because there were a lot of not so pleasant glances sent his way. And the priest did something that I will never forget. He pointed to my cousin and his daughter, who was by that time asleep on her father's shoulder, and said something like, "Do you see that baby over there? She is the purest embodiment of God's great love." He made my cousin feel welcome in a space that had recently been hostile to his daughter's presence. How often have we felt annoyed by the presence of not too quiet children in our midst during a service? We turn and, like those students, glare at the struggling parent, and we tell the children and their parents without words, "You are not quite welcome here," instead of, "You are the purest embodiment of God's great love." I had a non-binary congregant once who wanted to be referred to by the pronouns they, them. They had some issues that involved the pastoral care team, and when they interacted with the members of the pastoral care team, no one would ever use the right pronouns for them. And they came to me and they asked me if I could talk to the people on pastoral care for them. And when I talked to the members of the pastoral care team about this, one of them said she wasn't able to use the right pronouns because she was not used to calling individuals by the pronoun they, and she just couldn't do it. She was in essence saying to that person, "You are not fully welcome here." Our country and our denomination are becoming more diverse as people from all across the world migrate to our shores, especially in large urban centers like ours. We can now find people from Asia and Africa, the Middle East and South and Central America gracing our pews. We now have among us Muslim UUs and Hindu UUs, as well as Buddhist, pagan, Christian, and Jewish UUs. And they bring with them pieces of their cultures that enhance rather than diminish who we are. And because of that, our worship may change, our music may change. In the book Beyond Welcome, African-American UU Dr. Janice Marie Johnson writes, "Without question, I know I deserve a place at the UU table. I also know that each of us deserves this privilege. I recognize my longing for multicultural connection within this faith I cherish. Years ago, I wanted to be warmly welcomed into our congregations. I still have that desire, but nowadays I want more. I want each of us to belong to an equitable congregation. I want multicultural leadership, music, worship, and governance to be woven into the fabric of our congregations." This congregation adopted the 8th principle last spring, and that is not the end product of the process of working toward more welcoming, inclusive congregations. It is only the first step into working toward what Dr. Johnson describes as equitable congregations. Because creating equitable congregations requires that we hard work on ourselves and the institution, that we question our attitudes towards race, class, age, physical ability, and gender, especially in a society that is beginning to remove the rights for women and trans youth, to erase and whitewash Black history, to silence voices of those only recently visibly entered the conversation. My husband, Carl, works for NPR Washington, They have a diversity, equity, and inclusion conversations all the time, open to all employees who have a chance to voice their opinions and have their voices heard. The question they ask as part of these conversations are, what implicit biases do we hold? What stories are we not broadcasting? Whose voices are not being heard as part of our ongoing reporting? Whose voices are we centering in our stories? What is the demographic makeup of our leadership and the rest of our organization? Whose voices are part of our broadcast talent? Do they mirror the diversity and issues of an even broader listening audience? They ask these questions because they know that if they are not representing the vast diversity of our country and beyond, they will become irrelevant. And here's the thing, these conversations are not easy. There's a lot of divisiveness and many differences of opinion. And they know that there is no end to their efforts. There is no end point to the conversations. They are ongoing because the world is changing and the conversations will always be necessary. I'm sometimes jealous of the scope and frequency of their conversations. I think if a broadcast network realizes the need to have these conversations, then shouldn't denominations and congregations also be having these conversations? Because like NPR, we as UUs do not want to become irrelevant. The graduate program of which I was part those many years ago encouraged us not to reject our religious homes, but rather to make them bigger, and not necessarily in physical numbers, but spiritually, emotionally, theologically, to create a more expansive welcome of all in our congregations. And that's why I love that program so much. We are living in very confusing times. Things are changing in ways we do not fully understand. Truth has become a fuzzy thing. We need spaces like this one to talk about what it means to respond to all this upheaval and to respond to it in ways that stretches our understanding of what it means to be UU. We need to open the circle of welcome until it encompasses the world. Amen and blessed be.
Our closing hymn is number 360, Here We Have Gathered. Please rise in body or spirit and join us in singing.
Come on.
Our benediction this morning is by Emily Richards. Our work here this morning is at an end, and our work has just begun. The work of holding one another and this community in love. The work of trusting that we are on the right path. The work of believing that what connects us is stronger than what separates us. The work of engaging that which makes us whole. The work of deeper understanding and commitment. The work of letting go of that which does not serve us. The work of radical inclusion. The work of collective liberation. The work of this beloved community. The beloved community of which we are all part. A place where we are welcomed, respected, valued, and cherished. A place where we belong.
We now extinguish this flame, but not the light of hope and truth, the warmth of community, not the fire of commitment. These we carry forth in our hearts until we are together again.
Circle,
Thank you, Cynthia, Diane, and the choir. It's beautiful. Speaking of drawing the circle wide, I see some new faces today, so special welcome to everyone who may be here for the first time. Glad to see you. So this brings our service to an end. We invite our congregation to join us for coffee or tea and fellowship out in the East Foyer. Those attending worship on Zoom can join us for our virtual Greet Your Neighbor, which is on Zoom. The link is in the chat box and will be on a slide in a minute here. We hope you'll use the chat box as a virtual receiving line to leave a message about your appreciation of the worship service. And I hope everyone enjoys this beautiful fall day.